Alright, you magnificent bastards. Today, we're diving into one of the most stupidest hypotheticals I've ever come up with. What if the Galactic Empire from Star Wars found itself smack dab in the middle of the 40k galaxy? Could they survive? Could they thrive? Or would they just get their arse handed to them by a random orc warband? Before they could even say, "That's no moon." Well, grab a glass of whiskey, sit your arse down, and let's break this absolute shitstorm of a scenario apart. Now, before we start, do me a huge solid. Like, subscribe, and ring that fucking bell. Now, let's get into the video. Right, so for those of you who've been living under a rock, or perhaps you've just been too busy chanting for the Emperor, while dunking your miniatures in nun oil, the Galactic Empire is the big bad of Star Wars. Imagine the Roman Empire, but in space, and with a shitload more laser cannons. Led by Palpatine, a wrinkly Sith Lord who looks like he's been in a microwave one too many times. The Empire is a well-oiled war machine built on military domination, bureaucratic oppression, and the occasional planet-sized death ray. It's got massive fleets, an army of Stormtroopers, and more superweapons than common sense. Now, let's talk about their competitors. The Warhammer 40k galaxy isn't some sleek sci-fi utopia. It's a nightmare realm of eternal war, where the only guarantee is everything wants to kill you. At the center of it all is the Imperium of Man, a galactic-spanning theoretical dictatorship that makes the Galactic Empire look like a fucking charity. The Imperium worships the Emperor of Mankind, a godlike figure who technically has been dead for 10,000 years, yet still manages to rule from the Golden Throne, a life support system that doubles up as a massive fucking lighthouse. The Imperium is a bureaucratic nightmare, powered by faith, fanaticism, and endless war. You want to invent something new? That's tech heresy. You want to live past 30 on a hive world? Tough shit. Planets are taxed to the point of starvation, their populations are thrown into war without a second thought, and the Imperium's idea of diplomacy is a bolt around to the skull. And yet, they're still one of the best options in the galaxy. Just a quick reminder, I'm going to be bringing the Galactic Empire at the peak of their power. You'll figure out what that is in a couple minutes here. So, let's say, by some warp fuckery, the Galactic Empire, fresh off their second Death Star, getting its arse blown to bits, ends up in the Warhammer 40k galaxy. Now, they don't just show up with a couple of ships and a confused Stormtrooper. Oh no, they come fully armed and ready to wage war, like they always do. We're talking 25,000 Imperial-class Star Destroyers, each capable of glassing a planet, obliterating fleets, and genuinely making life miserable for anyone who isn't under their boot. 40 Super Star Destroyers, these Executor-class bastards, are 90 kilometers long, packed with more weapons than an orc warboss's wet dream, and able to bulldoze through enemy fleets like a runaway freight train. A Death Star, because if there's one thing the Empire loves, it's unnecessarily big fucking super weapons. And since Palpatine always has a backup plan, let's say that he made a third Death Star, and it got teleported into the 40k galaxy as well, because, oh why the fuck not? And a metric fuckton of AT-ATs, AT-ATs, Stormtroopers, and enough TIE fighters to block out the fucking sun. Seriously, the sheer amount of materials the Empire brings is fucking ludicrous. TIE fighters alone outnumbered the population of some Imperial Hive cities. And let's not forget, a very pissed off Emperor Palpatine and Vader, ready to four-stroke their way to galactic domination. But let's be honest, Palpatine would fucking love the 40k galaxy. It's all about authoritarianism, religion, fanaticism, and ridiculous war crimes. He'd fit right in. Vader, well, he'd probably already be planning how to kill half of the people in the room. Now, where do we end up? Let's be nice and assume they don't immediately appear in the middle of the Eye of Terror, because that would be a very short video. Instead, let's say they materialize somewhere in a relatively quiet part of the Imperium, maybe near the eastern fringes, or Segmentus Pacificus, far away from Terror, but still within the Imperium's borders. Now, before we even get into the Imperium, noticing them, let's talk about the Empire's reaction, because this is where the fun begins. The moment they arrive, Palpatine is losing his wrinkly fucking mind. He can't sense the Force like he used to, because, guess what? The warp is a thing here. And instead of his usual Sith precognition, all he gets is a goddamn migraine every time he tries to look into the future. Meanwhile, Vader is having the worst fucking day of his life. The warp, he can hear screaming voices, constantly, and chaos is very interested in him. And oh yeah, there's this massive golden corpse on a throne that the locals are calling the Emperor. And let's be real, Vader isn't taking this very well. Meanwhile, Thrawn, the Empire's greatest tactician, is already scheming, because unlike everyone else, he's actually reading the room. He looks at the Imperium's navy ships the size of cities, hearing rumors of 10-foot tall superhumans with power armor, and he's thinking, right, we need to be very fucking careful here. And the Inquisitorius, oh, these sneaky bastards are thriving. They can't sense the Force like usual, but they can sense something, and it's making them paranoid as hell. They immediately start setting up operations to infiltrate the Imperium's ranks. And they're very interested in the Ecclesiarchy, because, let's be honest, these people are just the Empire's brand of crazy. The moment the Empire realizes how batshit insane the Imperium is, Palpatine, Thrawn, and the Inquisitorius all agree on one thing. If they don't move fast, they're fucked. Right, now we've got the Empire showing up, and immediately they're causing some concern, because the Imperium is extremely xenophobic, and they sure as fuck don't recognize these guys. The Empire is sending out probes and scouting fleets, which means some poor bastard in the Adeptus Administratum is having a fucking meltdown, trying to figure out why an entire battle fleet just appeared out of nowhere. The Imperium High Command isn't used to seeing human Xenos, and the Empire sure as hell doesn't follow the God Emperor of mankind. The Empire's technology is different, but still competent as fuck. And more importantly, their numbers are ludicrous. At this point, the Imperium is confused as fuck. Their first instinct? Panic. The Adeptus Mechanicus starts frothing at the mouth because the Empire ships don't use the Omnissiah's approved STC design, but somehow still works. That's heresy. The Ecclesiarchy is losing their shit because Palpatine is calling himself an Emperor, and that's double heresy. The Imperium Navy is sending scout fleets, but even they're starting to sweat, because the sheer amount of ships that the Empire has makes no fucking sense. And then, to make things worse, the Death Star fires its first shot. The Empire, knowing first impressions are important, decide to make a statement. Some Imperial governor refuses to bend the knee. Boom! One Death Star blast later, and suddenly the Imperium is very fucking aware that these Xenos have a moon-sized planet killer. The Imperium, understandably, is having a fucking meltdown. The High Lords of Terror are screaming at each other. The Adeptus Custodes are considering calling in Gilliman, and several Imperial Navy admirals just pissed themselves. At this point, the Imperium is likely to assume they're some minor human splinter faction and send in a small exploratory fleet to investigate. And by investigate, I mean make them either swear allegiance to the Emperor or blow them to fuck. And here's where things get fun. The Empire isn't backing down. They've got 25,000 Star Destroyers, a Death Star, and an army of pissed off Stormtroopers. They aren't bending the knee. Palpatine, seeing an opportunity, The Imperium is fractured, religious, and built on authoritarianism. Basically, his kind of people. He starts scheming. Thrawn realizes they need to play the long game. He starts setting up defenses, positions, fortresses, and strategies for carving out a foothold. And so the first shots are fired, and the Empire's war of survival in the 40k galaxy begins. At first glance, you might think, the Galactic Empire is fucked. 40k ships are absurd, and the Imperial Navy ships are ridiculously powerful. But let's give the Galactic Empire some credit. Star Destroyers are tough bastards. They've got deflector shields, turbo lasers, and sheer overwhelming firepower. One Imperial-class Star Destroyer can glass a planet if given enough time. Their fleets are reasonably coordinated, and their fighters can fight in formation, unlike the Imperial Navy's more individualistic ships. Super Star Destroyers are monstrous. These 90-kilometer long beasts can hold their own against entire enemy fleets, carrying enough fighters, walkers, and troops to invade a planet by themselves. And the Death Star, need I say fucking more? It erases planets. The Imperium might have exterminatuses, but the Death Star is instant, theatrical, and downright horrifying. Now, the Imperium Navy's battleships, like the Retribution class, are longer than a Super Star Destroyer, built like a cathedral, had a baby with a nuclear warhead, and hits harder than your drunk stepdad in a bar fight. While 40k ships are heavy hitters, the Galactic Empire has speed and removability. Star Destroyers are fast and able to respond quicker than most of the hulking behemoths that the Imperial Navy has. Sheer fucking numbers. The Galactic Empire has tens of thousands of ships ready to bring hell upon its enemies. Unfortunately, the Imperial Navy does not have an ability to send resources that the Galactic Empire does. Remember, the Imperial Navy is extremely heavily fractured, and they can't always coordinate their ships and supply lines properly. But let's move on. The first battles are absolute bloodbaths. Thousands of TIE fighters crash into Imperial void shields like suicidal locust swarms. Turbo lasers hammer against adamantite armor, slowly grinding through the toughest Imperial battleships. Entire planets get absolutely annihilated when the Death Star starts to get involved, making sure that any Imperial world that resists gets turned into space dust. The Empire learns fast. They stop throwing TIE fighters blindly. They develop better tactics, and they start using planetary sieges to their advantage. They carve out a small territory, reinforcing their holdings, setting up shipyards, and establishing hyperspace lanes for supplies. The Imperium is stunned. They assumed this fight was one-sided, but the Galactic Empire isn't just surviving, it's thriving. And for the planets that get conquered by the Empire, they're better off than if they were under the Imperium. No tides of billions of soldiers every generation. No Adeptus Arbites executing you for sneezing at the wrong time. No tech priests burning you alive for touching a toaster. Actual infrastructure, development, and organized bureaucracy. And not to mention basic fucking rights. Compared to the Imperium's grimdark hellscape, being ruled by the Empire is like winning the fucking lottery. Now, the war on the ground. On the ground, the Galactic Empire has a serious advantage. Stormtroopers may be memed to hell, but compared to the majority of the Imperial Guard, they're better trained, better armored, and actually have a chance of survival. AT-ATs, these massive walking death machines, can level an entire city, crush hordes of infantry, and blast tanks into absolute oblivion. But then they start running into problems. Space Marines, these 8-foot tall genetically engineered powered armored bastards, can survive blast of fire, rip AT-ATs apart, and tank a fuck ton of punishment. Orks, the Empire doesn't understand them, and that's the problem. TIE fighters crash, get looted, and suddenly the Orks have DACA ties. They're adapting, and that's not good. The Tyranids, AT-ATs can crush infantry, but a Carnifex doesn't give a fuck. Vader versus Chaos Sorcerers is going to be one hell of a fight. But this is where Vader shines. Imagine a horde of space marines charging across the battlefield, bolters roaring, chainswords revving, the ground shaking beneath their feet. And then Vader steps forward, bolter rounds stop in midair, crushed by the Force. Astartes get lifted and thrown like fucking ragdolls. Force chokes turn entire squads into oxygen-deprived corpses. Power swords clash with his lightsaber, only for him to rip marines apart with his raw strength. Dreadnoughts get smashed into the ground like they weigh nothing. Vader is a one-man army, and the Space Marines don't know how to handle him. Even the Librarians struggle because Vader's raw willpower keeps chaos from corrupting him. Meanwhile, Thrawn is leading ground campaigns, exploiting weaknesses in the Imperium's defensive lines, overwhelming Titans, and outflanking even the toughest regiments. The Galactic Empire holds its own and pushes back the Imperial Guard, fighting Orks and even winning brutal battles against the Eldar, and the Inquisitorius and any other stuff the Empire brought that we don't know about. They start hunting Psychers and wiping out leaders of the Imperium, and destabilizing entire planets before an invasion even begins. The war is a fucking nightmare, but the Empire isn't losing, they're winning. But how long would they last? Let's be honest, they aren't conquering the entire galaxy. The Imperium alone is massive, and the Death Star would eventually get wrecked by a well-placed exterminatus or a pissed-off Eldar craft world. But could they survive? They don't just survive, they carve out an empire about the same size as the original one in Star Wars. They hold dozens of sectors, they conquer entire regions of the Imperium, and establish themselves as a new power base in the galaxy. And by the end of it, Palpatine is laughing his wrinkly Sith arse off because he's done the impossible. He's carved out an empire in one of the most brutal sci-fi galaxies in history. The Imperium might be a vast, unbeatable nightmare, but the Empire proved it could stand amongst giants. And there you have it, folks. The Galactic Empire doesn't just survive, it thrives. They fight the Imperium to a standstill, battle Xenos, and carve out a sector-spanning empire. Sure, they aren't taking over Terror anytime soon, but they staked their claim. Now, how about you do the right thing? Like, subscribe, and ring that fucking bell. And join my Discord server, or I'll be dropping you into a fight between Vader and a Custodes Terminator, and trust me, you don't want to be in the middle of that. But remember, if you ever find yourself on a world about to be conquered, pray it's the Galactic Empire and not the Imperium, because at least one of them will give you a fucking toilet. My apologies for the late video, everyone. I've been extremely busy and I haven't had much time to do all this video editing and coming in and doing stuff, but I've got a lot planned. I've got some interesting Trench Crusade projects on the line, maybe some animated stuff, and there might be even a surprise for everyone at 300 subs, so who knows. But that's about it. So, have a killing day, you bloody legends, and I'll see you in the next one. Sorry for the late video. Have a killing day.